Are you looking for the best iPad? In this video we will look at some of the 4 best iPad on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description, so make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Number 1. Apple iPad Air M3. The recently refreshed iPad Air remains the Apple tablet we'd recommend to most people. Yes, it costs more than the entry-level iPad, and yes, there's still a gulf between it and the higher-end iPad Pro. But no iPad strikes a better balance between price, performance, and features. It's Apple's just right tablet, advanced enough to be a pleasure every day but not eye-wateringly expensive. The newest iPad Air, launched in March 2025, earned a score of 89 in our review. It starts at $599 for an 11-inch model or $799 for a variant with a 13-inch display. Outside of a higher brightness rating on the 13-inch model, 600 nits versus 500 nits, the two are virtually identical, so which one is best simply depends on what screen size you prefer. Most will probably spring for the 11-inch version given that it's cheaper and much easier to hold. But the added screen real estate on the 13-inch version is great if you typically use your iPad with a keyboard case, or just want more room for watching movies, playing games, or multitasking for work. Both models are much pricier than the base iPad, but the Air's upgrades mostly justify the premium. It now runs on Apple's M3 system on a chip, SoC, which is the same silicon found in last-gen MacBooks and iMacs. It's overkill for web browsing, video streaming, and other basic tasks, but it means performance should rarely, if ever, be an issue. It should also make the Air a little more future-proof, as a number of iPadOS features are only accessible with M-series chips or newer A-series silicon. All of the Apple Intelligence AI tools, for instance, aren't available on the newest entry-level iPad, nor are the ports of demanding video games like Death Stranding and Resident Evil 4. The Stage Manager multitasking mode is also restricted to more powerful iPads today, though that's changing with the upcoming iPadOS 26 update, which will bring a more robust windowing system in general. The base iPad still won't have full external display support, however, and it may not run Stage Manager as well on the whole. The M3 Air also has a healthy 8GB of RAM and 128GB of base storage. The standard iPad also starts with 128GB now but still has a bit less memory at 6GB. The iPad Air's 60Hz LCD display isn't as vibrant or smooth in motion as the 120Hz OLED panel on the latest iPad Pro, and it's starting to show its age in 2025 when some smartphones offer a higher refresh rate for hundreds of dollars less. Still, it's bright, sharp, and relatively accurate. It's also a step up from the entry-level iPad, as it's fully laminated, which means there's no visible gap between the display and the front glass. That may not sound like much, but it's one of those things that's hard to ignore once you've seen the difference. The Air's panel also has an anti-reflective coating to further minimize glare, plus it supports a wider P3 color gamut. Number 2. Apple iPad A17. The entry-level iPad, A16, isn't as nice as the iPad Air, but the two share the same design language, and the cheaper model is still perfectly competent at the core iPad things. For $349, that makes it a compelling bargain for those who want a modern iPad for as little cash as possible. The base iPad looks virtually identical to the iPad Air from afar. It's only marginally thicker and heavier, while its 11-inch panel is just as sharp and bright. Battery life comes in at the same 10-ish hours, and there's still a USB-C port and Touch ID sensor. The cameras are nearly the same, too, with the selfie cam located along its long edge. Most importantly, it gets you nearly all the same conveniences of iPadOS for $250 less. This model runs on a slightly cut-down version of the A16 Bionic chip found in 2022's iPhone 14 Pro and 2023's iPhone 15, plus 6GB of RAM. This combo won't hold up as well as higher-end iPads years down the road, and it can't run Apple Intelligence or extend to an external display via Stage Manager. Plus, the M3 Air is already noticeably faster for exporting 4K videos or playing the most taxing iPad games. But the A16 is more than quick enough for the tasks most people actually do with an iPad, be it watching Netflix, sending emails, playing casual Apple Arcade games, or even editing photos in Lightroom. If anything, many people will prefer to not have their tablet push AI on them. And with the iPadOS 26 update later this year, this iPad will have access to many of the same Mac-style productivity and multitasking features as its pricier siblings. Beyond that, it starts with the same healthy 128 GB of storage as the Air. The iPad, A16, does have a worse display than the Air, with no lamination, no support for the wider P3 color space, and no anti-reflective coating. Put the two side by side and the Air indeed produces slightly bolder colors and holds up better against glare. The lack of lamination makes writing with the Apple Pencil feel more abstracted on the cheaper model, too. For the price, though, this screen is still sharp, comfortably sized, and devoid of major color accuracy issues. The gap here isn't nearly as dramatic as the one between the Air's and iPad Pro's displays. Likewise, while the Air's dual speakers sound fuller and more rounded, the base iPad gets loud and clear enough to avoid serious problems. There are other downgrades. The iPad, A16, isn't compatible with the Apple Pencil Pro, just the lesser USB-C Pencil, which lacks pressure sensitivity, an ancient first-gen model. It doesn't work with the same Magic keyboards. Instead, it uses its own Surface-like accessory called the Magic Keyboard Folio, which has a function row but isn't as stable on your lap. It supports Wi-Fi 6 but not Wi-Fi 6E. The USB-C port is technically slower for data transfers, too, maxing out at 480 megabits per second instead of 10 gigabits per second. Number 3. Apple iPad Mini, A17 Pro. The iPad Mini is exactly what it sounds like, the small iPad. Apple updated it in late 2024 with a new chip and support for the Apple Pencil Pro, and it's still the shortest and lightest iPad in the current lineup by some distance. As before, it has an 8.3-inch Liquid Retina display that's easier to use with one hand. We gave the iPad Mini a review score of 83. Its design follows closely after that of the iPad Air: square-off edges, thin bezels, no home button, a Touch ID sensor in the power button, stereo speakers, decent cameras, and a USB-C port. Its display is technically sharper, but otherwise gives you the same max brightness, lamination, anti-reflective coating, and wide color gamut. It doesn't have a smart connector to hook up Apple-made keyboards, but it does work with the top-end Apple Pencil Pro and the less expensive USB-C Apple Pencil. The Pencil Pro is a step up over the older second-generation Apple Pencil the prior Mini used, with haptic feedback, a gyroscope, and a squeeze feature for opening up a brush palette. The Mini runs on Apple's A17 Pro chip, the same as the one in 2023's iPhone 15 Pro series. While this chip isn't quite as powerful as the M3 and the iPad Air, it's more than capable enough to handle what most people will want to do with this iPad. Notably, it's also powerful enough for Apple Intelligence. That might not be something that compels people to upgrade right now, or maybe ever, but the point is that the new Mini is more future-proof than its predecessor. The Mini starts at $499 for a 128GB model. Apple finally saw fit to double the base storage, which makes the cheapest model easier to recommend than before. If you specifically want a smaller tablet, whether it's to easily stuff in a bag, use with one hand, or treat like a high-end e-reader, this is the only one Apple sells, and the best option in its size range. Number 4. Apple iPad Pro, M4. The latest iPad Pro is the most expensive iPad and more tablet than most people need, full stop. But if you have cash to burn, are determined to use an iPad as your main mobile computer, or just want the most technically impressive iPad possible, this is it. We gave the new iPad Pro a score of 84 in our review. Like the iPad Air, it comes in 11 and 13-inch models. The former starts at $999, while the latter starts at $1,299. That's prohibitively expensive for most people, but for the money you get a number of premium, if inessential, upgrades over Apple's other tablets. The most significant of these is the Pro's tandem OLED display. Compared to the LCD screen on the iPad Air, this produces richer colors and deeper, more uniform black tones. Gaming and scrolling web pages look more fluid thanks to its faster 120Hz refresh rate. It can also get significantly brighter, reaching up to 1000 nits in SDR and up to 1600 nits with HDR highlights. This is where the tandem part comes in. Essentially, Apple is stacking two OLED panels on top of one another to improve peak brightness, which is often a relative weakness of traditional OLED displays. It's a breakthrough, but all you really need to know is that this screen is an absolute delight, one of the best we've seen on any consumer device, let alone a tablet. For watching movies or editing media, you really can't do better. This same display tech is used on both the 11 and 13-inch iPad Pro, unlike previous models, so which one is best merely comes down to personal preference. The design here is broadly similar to that of the iPad Air, but slightly thinner and lighter. The difference isn't huge on paper, but the Pro's slimmed-down frames make them just that little bit easier to hold. This is particularly meaningful with the 13-inch model.